Hola chicos, soy señorita Schaefer y hoy vamos a hablar de Cardinal Numbers. Es un repaso de Español 1, pero es muy importante que somos cómodos con los números. Entonces vamos a trabajar en página 29. La pregunta de hoy es, how do we use big numbers in Spanish? So please go ahead and write this down, and talking about how to use big numbers, we'll review our little ones as well. And please make sure that you leave a little bit of space for your answer as well. Alright, so we'll start by talking through your basic digits that you've learned before. Hopefully you remember these well. If not, I would go back to your review from Spanish 1 and look up a video on how to say these. But all of the numbers that we do today, I'm going to say a little bit more slowly so that you can repeat them after me. And that's really good practice for your brain. That'll help that information just stick in your brain better if you're seeing it and hearing it and saying it. So you have uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, seis, siete, ocho, nueve, 10. And you'll see evidence of a lot of those numbers in the numbers that we use higher up as well. They're kind of other forms based on the same root. Let's go ahead and talk about our tens, 10, 20, 30. Once again, please repeat after me. If I were you, as you go through this lesson, I would write down anything that doesn't seem very familiar to you, that you think you might need help remembering. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and then we'll talk about 100 and over when we're done. A couple of things that I want to talk about here before we move on. Remember that your V is kind of the mix of a B sound and a V sound, so we have 20. Another one that can be hard to remember is 60 versus 70. How I remember is that 6 has an S and 7 has a T, and you can see that evidenced in 60 and 70. As we move on to the hundreds, I want to just talk about the number 100 first. When you use it by itself, it's 100, if you just want to say 100. If you want to say 100 plus anything else, you use ciento. So like 101, 102, 110. But if you're just saying 100, then you'll use 100. Please make a note of that in your notes. And then you can repeat after me again as we continue through our hundreds. You'll notice that most of them have cientos and then the number, but there are going to be a couple that are irregular, so I'll star them as we go, and I would recommend that you star them as well. 200, 300, 400, 500. 500 is one of those that's not quite what we would expect. 600, 700. Another one that's just a little bit different. 800, 900. Mark that one as well. And those are our groups of hundreds. We'll do a couple more as we get into the millions, and then we're going to move on to a couple of rules. So 1,000 is mil. This can be a little bit hard to remember because sometimes we'll call million mil in Spanish, in English, sorry. But in Spanish, million is millón. So 1,000 is mil. So 2,000 is 2,000. 100,000 is 100,000. 200,000 would be 200,000, etc. So those all just add up. You keep on adding how many mil, how many thousand. A couple of rules before we finish up today. First of all, un is not used before cien, ciento, and mil. So this is something that we usually do in English. We'll say 100 or 1,000. In Spanish, they don't do that. They just say cien or ciento or mil. So, for example, to say 100 people would be 100 personas. 1,000 people would be mil, pesos would be 1,000 pesos. That's rule number one. Rule number two, un or una. So when you're talking about one, and numbers ending in cientos or cientas agree in gender with the nouns that follow them. So really it's gender and number, but anything with cientos is going to be plural because it'll be hundreds of something. But just a reminder that those need to agree. So, for example, you would say, hay 31 videojuegos en la mesa. There are 31 videojuegos en la mesa. And this is the one situation where it's not going to agree in number because you're saying one. So there are 31 video games on the table. Because video games is masculine, we'll make sure that the one is masculine as well. One more example. Esta librería tiene más de 500 revistas. This library has more than 500 magazines. Because magazines is feminine, we'll make sure that 500 is feminine. Alright, rule number 3. To give the date in Spanish, and hopefully you guys know this since we do this most days, to give the date in Spanish, use el plus the cardinal number, that's what we just learned, plus de plus the month. So for example, we would say el 20 de enero, the 20th of January. The last rule for today is rule number 4. The year is always given using complete numbers. So in English we might say, oh, it was in 94 instead of 1994. In Spanish they always give the complete number. So for example, 1984, and you guys can totally figure this out. I know it looks just a little bit intimidating, but you just work piece by piece. So we know 1000 is 1,000, 900 is 900, 80 is 80, and 4 is 4. 1984. 1984. Please make sure that you have anything from this page written down before we move on. This is actually the only page that we're going to work on today. And then we'll just go ahead and answer our question of the day when you're ready. Alrighty, so as we finish up today, we ask how do we use big numbers in Spanish. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and write down any numbers that you might need help remembering. I'm especially going to point out 500, 700, and 900 because they're a little bit different than what we would expect. Remember, we have 500, 700, and 900. Other than that, I'll leave it up to you which ones you might need help with as you look back at these notes. I would write down our 4 rules, that we don't use un with 100 or with 1000 in Spanish. Number 2, that un or una and cientos or cientas must agree in gender. Number 3, that to give the date, we use el plus the cardinal number, the ones that we just learned, plus day, plus the month. And then number 4, that the year uses complete numbers. So this can kind of be a lot of information. I think that you guys probably are already comfortable with most of these things, so please don't feel overwhelmed. But if you have any questions, please go ahead and write them down now on your paper so that you can remember to ask me when we get back to school. Gracias por escuchar y hasta luego.